Hello folks, and welcome back to Whiskey Wars. My name is Sean, and tonight we got another bottle review for you. Tonight we are going to get into Michter's Sour Mash. Let's talk about it. So here's our bottle for this evening, Michter's Sour Mash. There you go. Get a load of that. And and as you know, Michter's does a low entry proof into barrel. And so what that means for us is that the water that's added ahead of time into the barrel takes on some of the characteristics of the barrel, which then adds more flavor to your end product. At least that's the way my palate perceives it, and yours may as well. And most people agree that low entry proof is a good thing because it gives the water a chance to get some flavor into it instead of just being bland water that's added at the end, which has no flavor. So yeah, so we appreciate that Michter's does that. Thank you, Michter's. Now, Michter's is also a source product, and we all have a pretty good idea of where it's sourced from. But let's get into this nose and tasting. So the nose is very light. I will say that. It's very quintessential bourbon as well. So a lot of caramel, tons of caramel on this. Nice butterscotch note. There's a little bit of an oak presence there. I would say more like fresh cut oak than necessarily a toasted or even charred oak. It's just kind of like a woody presence. Not sour though. It's a nice oak presence. It doesn't smell like a sour young oak. There's a little bit of a pepper note as well. Also, just a hint of maybe a pear note showing up. I have to say that the nose is not exactly jumping out of the glass on this. Of course, it is only 86 proof, so it's a few proof points lower than the small batch. And it's kind of noticeable. I actually filmed these back to back, so I filmed this right after filming the small batch, and there is certainly a difference on the noses. The small batch has a much more prominent nose. This nose is lighter, and we'll see if the palate is lighter. Let's go and get into our first sip here. And I would say that it is lighter than the small batch. Again, I'm doing these right back to back, and it's still nice. You still get a lot of the notes that you get on the small batch, although in kind of a different way. So the caramel's still nice, although toned down compared to the small batch. The butterscotch, I would say, is more present than on the small batch, but the brown sugar level is toned down quite a bit. There is kind of this spiky note mid-palate. I'm not really sure how to describe it. It's almost like a spike of sour oak that just pops up there kind of mid-palate, which isn't that great. It's a little bit astringent, a little tannic maybe even. Yeah, and that kind of takes away from it, if I'm honest. The rest of it is pretty nice, but it's just kind of a toned down version of the small batch, which is already pretty toned down. Yeah, so let's go ahead and take one more sip and talk about the finish and then final thoughts. Yeah, so just across the board, I don't think this is as good of an experience as the small batch. The notes that I enjoy are kind of toned down compared to the small batch. The notes I don't enjoy are kind of amplified, which is this sour oak, kind of spiky ethanol notes, maybe even. There's also kind of this almost like burnt black pepper note. Not quite the finish, but just back of the palate that kind of happens. The finish itself is much more sour than the small batch. And I want to be clear, this is not bad. It's just that, having the small batch in mind, and these are basically the same price point, although I don't know about your area, but this can be harder to find. Small batch is basically everywhere. And I don't know if it's worth really hunting for this. And some stores actually charge up for this, so sometimes this will be 60 compared to the small batch, which is usually 40 to 45. I don't think it's worth any extra money. Actually, I think the small batch is better. Yeah, so I would not pay more for this, ever, for any reasons. I think it's definitely worth the 40 to 45. It is a nice experience, I want to be clear. And if you like more sour notes, then you'll probably like this more than I do. But I like more just kind of, so the small batch is just kind of like caramel, butterscotch, brown sugar, vanilla cream, nice kind of toasty oak notes, and just well-rounded. Whereas this is kind of has some spiky notes that pop up, and then the other notes aren't as kind of, they don't really pop as much. So yeah, I don't know. I think in all, this is not as good of an experience. So I have to rate it likewise. So let's talk about that rating. Rating, I'm going to say, certainly not bad. I'm going to go 7.4. A good, solid bourbon, but I do think the small batch does it better. And I don't think Michter's makes a bad product, but this is not necessarily the standout in the line to me. So there it is, folks. There's the rating. If this helped you, if you liked the video, all those good things, please hit that like button. That way YouTube knows you liked it. We appreciate that very much. Also, here's other reviews from us. Please watch those. And here is the subscribe button, so please do that. And until next time, folks, just remember, you can never have too much good whiskey.